issue I want to talk about, oops, I'm going the wrong way here, excuse me, is immigration reform. I get a lot of questions about this because you'll read in the news quite a bit about immigration because Congress is working at tackling this issue. Now, I've seen this movie a few times already. Here's the issue. Every time Congress does a big immigration law, they declare at the moment, we've fixed the problem, we won't have to revisit this ever again. But the problem is, it never gets fixed, and we have to do it all over again. Ronald Reagan in 1986 passed the Simpson-Mazzoli Law. It was an amnesty for then the undocumented immigrants, and it was employer sanctions to make sure employers never again hire an undocumented immigrant, and they thought they fixed it. Well, 10 years later, in 1996, they didn't. It was clear. So Bill Clinton signed into law a new immigration reform, thinking, okay, they finally fixed it, only to find out a little less than 10 years later, we still have a problem, it's not working, we don't have control of the border, so since about 2006, we were trying to fix this problem. And so we finally woken up to the fact that not only do we need to fix our immigration laws for lots of reasons, we want to do it in a way that it works, that it lasts, that it's enduring, that we're not in the same problem 10 years down the road. And so that means there's a lot of issues that have to be dealt with. And in this day and age, in the 21st century post-9/11 environment, we have new concerns that we might not have had before. Terrorism, national security. We've got drug cartels in Mexico that are really, growing in a problem. And so for national security reasons and economic security reasons, we've got to really get secure of our border. We have to know who's coming and going from the country. We don't know that. And so the first priority, and as I mentioned a second ago, there's discussions on this. There are bipartisan efforts in the Senate. There's a bipartisan effort in the House to try and get this to work, to make this sense. It's negotiation and common ground finding to figure out how to do this. The first thing is, what do you do to secure the border? We've learned a whole lot since we've had Homeland Security and since we've done a lot of research on this, on what it's going to take to secure the border. So when I say triggers and metrics up here, the final law that we're looking for has specific triggers that said, here's what you actually need to secure the border. I mean, physically, here's where you need a fence, here's where you need unmanned aerial vehicles, here's how many Border Patrol agents, here's where the detention facilities need to be, actual triggers that say, here's how you get operational control of the border. That's point number one, requirement number one. And when that then is met, then the rest of the law gets triggered. Because you're first going to get security of the border, then you can do these other things. Second big issue is the workforce. When they passed this law in '86, it basically told employers, you can't hire an undocumented immigrant. And there's this I-9 form you have to fill out to determine whether the person's legal or not. There's no way an employer can tell whether that's authentic or not. Because what happens is, an undocumented immigrant can very easily use someone else's social security number, claim it as their own, and then just work. So we don't have a system that truly prevents an undocumented person from getting a job. So we've had this pilot project in law for a number of years called E-Verify. It's a way of digitally authenticating whether a person truly is this person claiming the right social security number with a work permit to be able to legally work in this country. And so the idea here is put this in law in place. It takes a couple of years to get E-Verify up and running so that we truly can tell a person is who they claim to be and that they're lawfully present, because the big magnet of immigration is to come and get a better life, to work hard so you can make more money to take care of yourself and your family. And if you can easily come to this country and work without documentation, then you'll keep doing it. But if now you have an employment verification system that's digital, that's online, that uses the kind of technology we need, then you can't get a job without real documentation, then you won't try. So the idea here is you've got to, at the job level, make sure that you can truly determine if the person's legal or not, and prevent an employer from hiring someone they really now know not to be legal. That's really important. And so that's issue number two. But to make border security work, to make this whole thing work, you've got to have a viable legal immigration system. If you basically just shut down the border and say nobody else can come, but you have all these sectors in our economy, even in this kind of economy, that still can't find labor. Dairy farmers in western Wisconsin, the hospitality people in Wisconsin Dells, the nursery growers, high-tech entrepreneurs who need software engineers. Then you'll have such a huge pressure for illegal immigration. So the idea here is sort of a wide gate, high fences. Have a system of guest workers so that people can come legally through the front door with a biometric ID so we verify they are who they say they are, so that they can come and work in jobs, making sure that these aren't jobs that can be filled by other people, jobs that are going unfulfilled. And there are those jobs in this country. So that you can separate the economic immigrant, the person coming to make a better life for themselves and their family, from what I would call the criminal immigrant, the drug smuggler, maybe the terrorist. The problem we have with our border is the vast majority of people are economic immigrants coming to work. And criminal immigrants are integrating in and among them and making it really hard for us to sort this thing out and get security at the border. If you can get economic immigrants out of that flow into a regulated flow through the front door, it makes it so much easier, more viable to actually secure the border. So you have to have a workable system of future flow of immigration to separate the economic immigrants from the people who are really trying to stop the border. And you got to make sure that it's done in such a way that it meets the economy's needs without taking a job from somebody who's here, without taking a job from a citizen. There's a lot to that, but that's basically the job here, the goal here. Now here's the other problem. What do you do about the uninsured? The undocumented. That's the biggest issue of all. It's estimated we have about 11 million people in this country who are undocumented. About 40% of them are people who came actually legally and then they just overstayed their visa. And here's the issue. Even if the government would conclude that they're going to find every one of these people and deport them, there's no way the government can do it if they try. It's just not a viable possibility. And so, given that that's the fact, the question is, what do you do? Because we don't want to do an amnesty that sort of rewards a person for cutting in line, that does violence to the rule of law, because we're a nation of laws. You want a system that gets this right while respecting the rule of law, but gets people out of the shadows. And so the basic consensus is this. Give an undocumented immigrant probationary status. Just like if you break a law and a judge puts you on probation. We call it deferred adjudication. So you come out of the shadows, you acknowledge, you sign an affidavit, you broke the law, so then you pay a fine, you pay back taxes if you owe them, go through a background check to make sure you have a clean criminal record, learn English, civics, and you're on probation. It's a non-immigrant work visa. So you can stay and work, but if you want to ever adjust your status, you can't for at least 5 years, and you cannot until all those people who came through the border the right way the first time, who waited in line, who paid the fees, who are legally doing it the right way, they have to be gotten to first before any of these people on probation can be gotten to. Meaning you have to go to the back of the line, and you're not going to be rewarded for having cut in line. So the idea here is get a system in place that's probationary. You violate the terms of probation, you're already acknowledging you can be deported. So it's tough. It takes over a decade to change your status. Everybody who did it right is in front of the line. So basically the idea is get people out of the shadows, get the system fixed, while still respecting the rule of law and respecting the person who did it right in the first place. That's the general consensus on how to tackle this problem. Because the whole point of this is we don't want to do an immigration reform bill just like 86 and 96, where we find out in 6 or 10 years it didn't work. We have more undocumented immigrants, and we're back in the same soup again.